All right, part two. Footers. 1. Later mythographers understood Atlas as a simple personification of Mount Atlas in northwestern Africa, whose peak seemed to hold up the heavens, but for Homer, the columns on which he supported the firmament stood far out in the Atlantic Ocean, afterwards named in his honor by Herodotus. He began perhaps as the Titan of the second day of the week, who separated the waters of the firmament from the waters of the earth. Most rain comes to Greece from the Atlantic, especially at the heliacal rising of Atlas's star daughters, the Hyades, which partially explains why his home was in the west. Heracles took the heavens from his shoulders. Yeah, it's not Hercules, is it? I don't know. From his shoulders into census. No, it's Heracles. No, it's not Hercules, it's Heracles. 2. The Egyptian legend of Atlantis, also current folktale along the Atlantic seaboard from Gibraltar to the Hebrides and among the Yorubas in West Africa, is not to be dismissed as pure fancy and seems to date from the 3rd millennium BC. But Plato's version, which he claims that Solon learned from his friends, the Libyan priests of Sais in the Delta, has apparently been grafted on a later tradition. How the Minoan Cretans, who had extended their influence to Egypt and Italy, were defeated by a Hellenic confederacy with Athens at its head. And how, perhaps as the result of a submarine earthquake, the enormous harbor works built by the Kiftu sea people, meaning the Cretans and their allies, on the island of Pharos, subsided under several fathoms of water, where they have lately been rediscovered by divers. These works consisted of an outer and inner basin, together covering some 250 acres. Such an identification of Atlantis with Pharos would account for Atlantis being sometimes described as a son of Iapetus, the Japhet of Genesis, whom the Hebrews called Noah's son and made the ancestor of the Sea People's Confederacy, and sometimes a son of Poseidon, patron of Greek seafarers. Noah is Deucalion. And though the Greek myth Iapetus appears as Deucalion's grandfather, this need mean no more than he was the eponymous ancestor of the Canaanite tribe, which brought the Mesopotamian flood legend rather than the Atlantean to Greece. Several details in Plato's account, such as the pillar sacrifice of bulls and the hot and cold water systems in Atlas's palace, make it certain that the Cretans are being described, and no other nation. Like Atlas, the Cretans knew all the depths of the sea. According to Diodorus, when most of the inhabitants of Greece were destroyed by the Great Flood, the Athenians forgot that they had founded Sais in Egypt. This seems to be a muddled way of saying that after the submergence of the Pharaoh's harbor works, the Athenians forgot their religious ties with the city of Sais, where the same Libyan goddess Neith, or Athene, or Tanat, was worshipped. 3. Plato's story is confused by his account of the vast number of elephants in Atlantis, which may refer to the heavy import of ivory into Greece by way of pharaohs, but is perhaps been borrowed from the older legend. The whereabouts of the folk tale Atlantis has been the subject of numerous theories, though Plato's influence has naturally concentrated popular attention to the Atlantic Ocean. Until recently, the Atlantic ridge stretching from Iceland to the Azores and then bending southward to Ascension Island and Tristan da Cunha was supposed to be its remains, but oceanographic surveys show that apart from these peaks, the entire ridge has been underwater for at least 60 million years. Only one large inhabited island in the Atlantic is known to have disappeared, the plateau now called the Dogger Bank. But the bones and implements hauled up in coordinates show that this disaster occurred in Paleolithic times, and it is far less likely that the news of its disappearance reached Europe from survivors who drifted across the intervening waste of waters than that the memory of a different catastrophe was brought to the Atlantic seaboard by the highly civilized Neolithic immigrants from Libya, usually known as the Passage Grave Builders. 4. These were farmers and arrived in Great Britain towards the close of the 3rd millennium BC, but no explanation has been offered for their mass movement westwards by way of Tunis and Morocco to southern Spain and then northward to Portugal and beyond. According to the Welsh Atlantis legend of the lost Catteries of Dyfed, impossibly located in Cardigan Bay, a heavy sea broke down the sea walls and destroyed 16 cities. The Irish Hebraisel, the Breton city of Ys, the Cornish Isles, no, the Cornish land of Lyonesse, possibly located between Cornwall and Sicily Isles, the French Isle Verte, the Portuguese Ilha Verde, all the variants of this legend. But if what the Egyptian priest really told Solon was that the disaster took place in the far west and that the survivors moved beyond the Pillars of Hercules, Atlantis can be easily identified. 5. It is the country of the Atlanteans, mentioned by Diodorus Siculus as the most civilized people living in the westward of Lake Tritonis, from whom the Libyan Amazons, meaning the matriarchal tribes later described by Herodotus, seized the city of Cern. Diodorus's legend cannot be archaeologically dated, but he makes it precede a Libyan invasion of the Aegean Islands and Thrace, an event which cannot have taken place later than the 3rd millennium BC. If then Atlantis was western Libya, the floods which caused it to disappear may have been due either to a phenomenal rainfall such as caused by the famous Mesopotamian and Augean floods, or to a high tide with a strong northwesterly gale, such as washed away a large part of the Netherlands in the 12th and 13th centuries and formed the Zuiderzee, or to a subsidence of the coastal region. Atlantis may in fact have been swamped at the formation of Lake Tritonis, which apparently once covered several thousand square miles of the Libyan lowlands, and perhaps extended northward into the western Gulf of Sirte, called by the geographer Scylax the Gulf of Tritonis, where the dangerous reefs suggest a chain of islands of which only Jerba and Kirkanoas survive. 6. The island left in the center of the lake mentioned by Diodorus was perhaps the Kamba Bo Ruba in the Sahara. Diodorus seems to be referring to such a catastrophe when he writes in his account of the Amazons and Atlanteans. And it is said that as a result of earthquakes, the parts of Libya towards the ocean engulfed Tritonis, making it disappear. Since Lake Tritonis still existed in his day, what he had probably been told was that as a result of earthquakes in the western Mediterranean, the sea engulfed part of Libya and formed Lake Tritonis. The Zuiderzee and the Copaic Lake have now both been reclaimed, and Lake Tritonis, which according to Scylax was still covered 900 square miles of classical times, has shrunk to the salt marshes of Chot Melgair and Chot El Jared. If this was Atlantis, some of the dispossessed agriculturists were driven west to Morocco, others south across the Sahara, others east to Egypt and beyond, taking their story with them. A few remained by the lakeside. Plato's elephants may well have been found in this territory, though the mountainous coastline of Atlantis belongs to Crete, of which the sea-hating Egyptians knew only by hearsay. 7. The 5 pairs of Poseidon's twin sons who took the oath of allegiance to Atlas will have been representatives at Pharos and Keftu, kingdoms allied to the Cretans. In the Mycenaean age, double sovereignty was the rule. Sparta with Castor and Polydeuces, Messina with Idas and Lycinus, Argos with Protus and Acrasis, Tiryns with Heracles. It doesn't look, I'm calling it Heracles, and Iphicles. Thebes with Eticles and Polynices. Greed and cruelty will have been displayed by the son of Poseidon only after the fall of Knossos, when commercial integrity declined and the merchant turned pirate. 8. Prometheus's name, forethought, may originate in a Greek misunderstanding of the Sanskrit word pramantha, the swastika or fire drill, which he had supposedly invented since Zeus Prometheus at Thurii was shown holding a fire drill. Prometheus, the Indo-European folk hero, became confused with the Carian hero Palamedes, the inventor or distributor of all civilized arts under the goddess's inspiration, and with the Babylonian god Ea, who claimed to have created a splendid man from the blood of Kingu, a sword of Cronus, while the mother goddess Aruru created an inferior man from clay. The brothers Pramanthu and Manthu, who occur in the Bhagavad Bhagavad Gita, Purana, Sanskrit epic may be prototypes of Prometheus and Epimetheus. Afterthought. Yet Hesiod's account of Prometheus, Epimetheus, and Pandora is not a genuine myth, but an anti-feminist fable, probably of his own invention, though based on the story of Demophon and Phyllis. Pandora, all-giving, was the earth goddess Rhea, worshipped under the title at Athens and elsewhere. Where is it? Whom the pessimistic Hesiod blames for man's immortality and all the ills which beset life, as well as for the frivolous and unseemly behavior of wives. His story of the division of the bull is equally unmythical, a cosmic antecedent invented to account for Prometheus's punishment and for the anomaly of presenting the gods only with the thigh bones and fat cut from the sacrificial beast. In Genesis, the sanctity of the thigh bones is explained by Jacob's lameness, which an angel inflicted on him during a wrestling match. Pandora's jar, not box, originally contained winged souls. I think I got to sneeze. I kicked its ass. 9. Greek islanders still carry fire from one place to another in the pith of a giant fennel, and Prometheus's enchainment on Mount Caucasus may be a legend picked up by the Hellenists as they migrated to Greece from the Caspian Sea, of a frost giant recumbent on the snow of the high peaks and attended by a flock of vultures. 10. The Athenians were at pains to deny that their goddess took Prometheus as her lover, which suggests that he had been locally identified with Hephaestus, another fire god and inventor of whom the same story was told, because he shared a temple with Athene on the Acropolis. 11. Menetius, ruined strength, is the sacred king of the oak cult. The name refers perhaps to his ritual maiming. 12. While the right-handed swastika is a symbol of the sun, the left-handed is a symbol of the moon. Among the Akan of West Africa, a people of Libyo-Berber ancestry represents the triple goddess Ghanem.